All right, beautiful day here at Pescadero. I'm going to try to make something of the scene behind me. And I'm going to be painting on a 16 by 20 inch panel. I'm going to try to focus on these rocks here in the foreground and then try to use atmospheric perspective to push back these distant headlands or cliffs. So at first I'm just sketching a few shapes, gestural shapes almost, just quickly laying down these shapes to see how I feel about the overall arrangement before committing to any sort of refinement of those shapes. And there are some shadows on the beach that I'm going to be losing pretty quickly here. So I do want to try to work quickly, which is how I like to work anyway. I feel like my paintings turn out better when I make quick decisions and don't overthink things, you know, relying on instinct. The rocks here are what I'm most interested in, so I want to make sure I've got them placed in a good spot, or a spot that features them well. I do like how the rocks kind of go off in the distance like this. I might have to have something else, like a few distant rocks out here. We'll see, which there are. There are quite a few rocks. All right, I'm squinting at this scene to reduce the shadow shapes into simple shapes. And I've got my usual dark mixture here of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. I've thinned the paint with liquid, and I'm keeping it thin because I plan to come over this with more accurate colors and values. But right now I just want to make sure that I have the big masses in place and that I like what I see. By keeping it thin, I can wipe it off and change things if necessary. But I've got a purple mixture here. I've just used ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and some titanium white. Also keeping this mix thin. All right, this area is in the water, but there is a cast shadow in the water. I've mixed up a gray for these distant cliffs. This is probably too dark, but it's a good starting point. Again, squinting at the scene and just looking for dark shapes. And I am staying pretty true to the scene. I'll only change things if I need to, compositionally. If something's awkward or not working, I have no problem moving things around or eliminating things. Titanium white, ultramarine blue, and a bit of phthalo blue. One of the areas where I like to have transparency is in the skies. You know, so some of the white of the panel showing through really does help create luminosity. The only challenge is that you have to get the sky right on the first pass if you hope to keep the transparency. I'm seeing a lot of different colors in the ocean, but for now I'm gonna just start with a mid-tone blue-green, just to quickly map out the shape of the ocean. And then again, I will come back and adjust the colors and values. As I've said, I think it's easier painting on a larger panel than it is on a small panel, just because you have more room for the changes in color and value. Even on this panel, some of these shapes in here feel really small. I'm using a number 8 natural bristle flat. This brush holds a lot of paint, so I can cover the panel quickly. Okay, the tide is going out and it is revealing some rocks. There are some beautiful colors around these rocks in the water, so I think I'll include them. And then also compositionally, I think it adds some interest and helps break up this big area. I'm always thinking about the composition. So I am walking back every few minutes just to make sure that I like what I'm seeing. right, I've added a bit of yellow to the mix. There's more yellow in the water up close. One of the nice things about working quickly and scrubbing in is you get a lot of energy into the painting early on. And then I try not to eliminate all of the scrubbing. I try to leave some of this scrubby energy in the finished painting if possible. Right, so I'm going to put in the dry sand. And I'm definitely pushing the warmth in the sand. So I've added quite a bit of yellow. I'm also trying to get close to the value of the finished sand. A lot of times when you look at the sand, it's so bright. It's very easy to paint the sand too light of a value, but I want to compare it to the whitewater. And even though the sand is bright, it is darker than the whitewater. All right, so now I'm putting in the wet sand. This is one of the most challenging colors to determine, partly because it changes as the water rushes out, and then also because there are several layers to the color. There's like the color underneath, and then there's the reflected color on the surface. All right, for the whitewater, I've got a mixture of titanium white and ultramarine blue, and I am keeping this mixture thin because I will be adding some warmer tones. Again, trying to work quickly and spontaneously. I do want to focus on the whitewater as a specific shape. So I want to make sure that that shape is interesting. It's very tempting when painting the water to break up the shapes just because that's kind of how it is out there. There's not a lot of order. So it's this trick of trying to create order but not too much. See the beach off in the distance. I'm going to keep this a little bit cooler in temperature than the sand up close. But again, I may be adjusting it and warming it up, we'll see. But for now, I'm going to cool it down to push it back. Titanium white, ultramarine blue for the whitewater in the distance. Bits of whitewater out here as well. All right, so there is the scrub in. At this point, I walk back about 10 or 12 feet just to make sure all the shapes are working. I really do like the shape of this whitewater, and then also some of the directional strokes in the water. All right, next step is to reinforce the darks, and I'm trying to maintain transparency. So I'm working dark to light, starting with the darkest darks. And I have to remember that there is quite a bit of moisture in the atmosphere. So I don't want to make them too heavy and too dark. Keeping transparency in the strokes will help with that as well. I'm using a number 6 natural bristle flat. This brush is brand new, so it's got long bristles, can hold quite a bit of paint. One of the most challenging things is trying to maintain the magic of the block in. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but sometimes you'll scrub in a painting, you'll block it in, and it actually has some magic going on, something really special. And then we just kill it by overworking. One way to hopefully prevent overworking is by walking back and making sure you're not losing your design or losing the magic. And if you walk back a lot, you'll hopefully catch yourself early before you've done too much damage. All right, I think I'm still okay. There's ice plant on the top of the cliffs. So I'm going to paint the dark portion. And then there's light along the ridge. Ice plant is a succulent. Actually, you can see it right here. Apparently it's not native to California. I'm not sure where it's from, but it is everywhere here now along the coast. More of it over here on the edge. There's a lot of red or orange in these cliffs in the shadows, and I do want to feature that, but I've got to make sure that I don't lighten the value too much. I want to make sure that this remains in shadow, but I do want color. So the value has to be just right. And I also want to make sure that it looks good inside. Oftentimes the shadows appear to be too dark inside and you can't see the colors. Even when your panel is not in the light, there's so much reflected light out here. But you get used to it. I can't use an umbrella on the coast because it's just too windy. And it's just another bit of gear for me to drag around. All right, I just stepped back and I saw that this rock needs to come down more, like that. It's more of a dramatic slope. All right, now I'm going to use the background water to carve out the shape of these rocks using the negative space behind them. Thinking some white water in here could be good to draw the eye out to this opening into the distance. And I'm going to see if I can get away with some saturated notes in here. All right, adding some of the lighter bits on the top of these rocks, and I'm paying attention to the value, because the value of these lighter portions is a lot darker than the white water. All right, I think these shadows are a little bit too dark. Just adding a bit of titanium white to lighten them up. Again, thinking about how they're going to read indoors. The light is changing pretty dramatically, so I'm going to try to wrap this up quickly. All right, so here's what I finished up with. I had a couple of goals in mind with this painting. Number one, I wanted the shadow shapes in the rocks here to be luminous and full of color. And then I also wanted a sense of depth in this painting. As far as the color and the luminosity of the shadows here, I think by keeping the shadows transparent and then keeping the value dark enough that these rocks appear to be in shadow, but light enough that you could actually see color. So slightly darker than a mid-tone, I would say. And then as far as the land in the background, as usual, I was surprised at how much I had to lighten it up to push it back. Things always seem lighter outdoors, and then you get it indoors and they feel too dark. So I definitely pushed this into a higher value range just to make sure that there was a sense of depth. Somebody just asked in the comments of one of my previous videos if I'm still toning my panels or my canvases. I used to tone with burnt sienna. Lately, I have not been doing that. I am sketching still with burnt sienna, so there are those little pops of orange that come through that I really like. But I have not been toning, and there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, I do like the bright white of the panel or canvas to be showing through in the transparent passages. And number two, sometimes that burnt sienna can mix with the colors that I'm applying and dull the colors down a bit. And I know there are some people that say, why don't you pre-tone? I like to make the decision right before I paint, and I often do like the panel or canvas to be slightly damp with odorless mineral spirits and tone, because it helps the paint go on quickly. But lately, I've just been really enjoying painting on a white surface. Maybe that's partially because of watercolor, having been doing watercolor recently, and I really do love the transparency of watercolor, and so I'm trying to get some of those effects in oil. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. Got a bunch of extra videos and a materials list, so check it out. And like I said, it does help support the channel. It's much appreciated. Other than that, stay creative. I'll see you guys in the next video.